So here's what we're building today. We're getting our planner data into Power BI. And one of the key reasons people tend to do this is because they want to send status updates about a project to someone who either does not have access to Planner or who will not log in to look at Planner. And the cool thing about this is once you have it set up, you can schedule all of it to run automatically. The key features we have going on here are we have our subtasks with check marks next to the completed ones. We have our status column with the conditional formatting icons. We have our bucket names. We have our start and due dates with the ones that are overdue in red. And we have our assignee names. This is a multi-value field. What we can do with this is we can filter it on the assignee and it'll filter the tasks to show only ones that are assigned to them. And we have our flags. So the flags are the little colored tags in Planner. So like this one here and this one here. And we can also filter on those. So let's get started building this. And this is assuming that you have seen the prior video on how to send your Planner data to a place where Power BI can connect to it with Power Automate. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out first. I'm going to link it in a card and in the video description. But if you've got your data ready to go in a JSON file, all you need to do is go to the SharePoint site that it's stored in. So for me, that's here, and I'm going to start with downloading this file. We are going to connect to it where it lives in SharePoint so that it can all be automated. But we're going to start off with the downloaded copy of the file and then change the path to it. So just click on the ellipses menu next to the file and then click on download. And while you're in here, also get the path of the file. So this is a little bit trickier to get than you would expect. I'm on a home page right now. I need to actually go to the document library itself in order to get the file path because it's not in the menu for the web part, if that makes sense. So either click on See All next to your document library or go to the Documents link in the sidebar and then navigate to your file and use the ellipses menu here and then go to Details. And then there's a More Details in the very far right bottom corner here. So open that up. And the path is this little icon next to the word path here. So copy this. This is the path to your file. Don't just open the file and copy the link from the address bar because that's the file preview and that won't work. So we need the actual file path here. So let's head on over to Power BI. I'm going to create a new file here. All right, so in Power BI, go to Get Data. And we are going to go to More to get the full list of options. And then we're going to want to choose JSON here. So we're going to get our data from our JSON file and connect. And then choose the file from your downloads folder. So that's this one here. So the first thing we need to do before we get started is to change the path that our query is looking for the JSON file from local to SharePoint. And we intentionally didn't use the SharePoint folder connector here because we only have one file that we're using. And the SharePoint folder connector adds a whole bunch of baggage and complication to it that we don't need. So we're just going to go to the source step for this query and click on the gear menu next to it. And we're going to paste in that path that we copied from SharePoint a minute ago and click OK. And you might need to sign in. You want to make sure the account type is organizational. So next we're going to duplicate this table 3 times to create our 3 dimensions. So those are our subtasks, our assignees, and our flags. Those are all things that can have multiple values. So if we want to set up our data model properly, we need to create dimension tables for those things. So I'm going to right click on our query and duplicate it. And then we're going to rename all of these. So this original table, I'm going to call tasks. All right, so on our tasks table, we're going to remove assignees and subtasks because we're using a separate table for those. So I'm just going to delete those columns. And buckets, we just need to expand. So I'm going to click on the double arrows next to it. I'm going to uncheck this use column name as prefix and just take out the bucket name because that's all we care about. And then for our date column, so that's the task start, task due, task complete dates, I'm going to shift click to select all 3 of those and go up to data type here and change it from date time to just date. And our task progress, this was the percentage complete field in the planner connector. This is not actually a percentage complete. It's just the value associated with not started, in progress, and complete. So what we need to do is map these number values to the actual status values. So we're going to create a conditional column. So I'm going to go to the Add Column tab up top and choose Conditional Column. And we're going to call this task status. And we're going to say if the task progress equals 0, then not started. And task progress equals 50 as in progress, and 100 is complete. And then I'm going to do for my else null here and click OK. And I'm going to add one more column for our overdue flag. So we need something that basically compares the due date to the date today. And if it's not completed and the due date is in the past, then it marks it as overdue. So I'm going to go up top and click on new custom column. This one has some complex logic in it, so we can't use conditional. We have to use custom and type it out ourselves. So I'm going to call this overdue with a question mark. And this is going to output a true false, but we're going to output the true false as text. And I'll explain why in a second. So for our logic, we're going to type in some M code. So we're going to say if, and then a parentheses, and then we want our task due date field. So double click on that to insert it. And then we're going to do a not equals symbol. So that's the two brackets like this, and null. So if it's not equal to null, I need a space in here. Then we need an and task progress, double click on that. Not equal to 100, and the task due date is less than date time dot dates, and M code is case sensitive, by the way, so make sure that you are using proper case. And then parentheses date time dot not fate time, date time dot local now parentheses, and another parentheses. So what this part is doing is it's getting today's date and time and converting that to date only, because there's no command for just getting today's date on its own. And then we're going to close our if statement here. And then we're going to do the word then, true in quotes, else false. And I'm intentionally putting the true false values in quotes because I actually don't want to output a Boolean here, okay? The conditional formatting settings don't like to use Boolean values, so we're going to make it text and key off the text. And then click OK. These custom columns come out as untyped, so we need to set the type. So I'm going to select both of the columns we just created and then go to the Home tab and set the data type to text. So that's the tasks. Let's move on to assignees. So assignees, we are going to select our task ID column, hold down Control and click the assignees column to select those two columns, and then right click on assignees and then click on remove other columns. So that leaves us with just the task ID and the assignees. And then we're going to expand out the assignee information with this double arrow icon here. We're going to expand to new rows, and then we're going to do the same thing again. So you have to expand this out a couple of times and click OK. And then we're going to filter out the null assignee values. So I'm just going to click on the triangle next to assignee ID and click on remove empty here. So that's all we need to do for that one. On to subtasks. So for subtasks, similar concept. We're going to select our task ID column and hold down Control, select subtasks. Right click on subtasks and do remove other columns. So we're left with our task ID and our subtask column, and then we're going to expand out subtasks. Expand to new rows, expand to new rows again. So this one, we're going to expand out whatever is in there. And then we get this value field here. So just keep expanding this all the way down. So you don't need all of these. I would just take the title and is checked will tell you whether or not it's complete. The order hint, I thought this would be the sort order, but it's not. So you can take a look at that if you want to, but you don't need it. And now let's filter out the nulls again. So we're just going to filter on the null ID here because they should always have an ID, right? And do remove empty on that too. One more step here. We're going to change this is checked column to the type of text because it makes the DAX a lot easier. So we're going to go with that and then go to our flags. The flags, if you recall, we added a line to our JSON file for each of the flag values that we wanted to record. So same concept as before, you're going to select your task ID and then scroll over to your flag values. So for me, this is pending and blocked. Hold Control while you select those and then do a remove other. And then this is the magic here. You want to right click on your task ID column and do a unpivot other columns. So what that does is it puts all of your flags into a single column. So you don't need this value one anymore because that's always true. And we're going to rename this to flags. So this would be a good point to go through and rename all of your columns to be friendly names. So that should be everything we need for our transformations. I'm going to click on close and apply. And let's make sure that our relationships are set up properly. So if you go to the little model view icon on the left-hand side, it looks like our flags set up as one-to-one, which isn't actually true. So I'm going to change this to one-to-many because you can have multiple flags on a single task. And that's many to one in this case because flags is the top one and tasks is the bottom one. And we want to leave this cross-filter direction on both because we want to be able to filter our tasks on our flags. And then for our assignees, this one should also be one-to-many. The other thing we need to do here is change the cross-filter direction on this one to both if we want to be able to filter our tasks by our assignee names. While we're in here, we're going to configure the display settings for our date fields. So by default, Power BI likes to display dates as Tuesday, January 15th, 2022 or whatever, that kind of thing. And you always need to change it. So I'm going to select the date field. So that was task start, task due, task complete. You can hold control to select multiple and then go to the date time format and change it from long date to short date or whatever you want it to display as. All right, now on over to the table view. So we need to create a few calculated columns on our tasks table. So what these are going to do is allow us to display comma separated or line break separated values for our assignees and our flags. So we wanted them split into their own dimension tables so that we can filter by them, but we also want to display them as a single field in our table, right? So I'm going to go to new column on our task table. And the first one is going to be assignees. And we're going to set that to be equal to one or more of your calculated columns need to be manually refreshed. I don't even have a calculated column yet. Okay, whatever. This is going to be equal to calculate, concatenate X, not concatenate, concatenate X. This is an iterator function, meaning it's going to iterate over our assignees and perform something on them. And we're going to feed it our assignee table. And the expression that we want is going to be our assignee name. And then for delimiter, you can choose how you want to separate these values. So you could use a comma and a space to separate the names, or you could, if you want them to be on their own lines, you could use a unichar 10. That's a line break. I'm going to go with unichar 10. And order by, you want to order it by, it doesn't really matter. You could do it alphabetically, I guess. So we can do by assignee name ascending, and then close all of our parentheses. So here's what that looks like over here. You don't see the line breaks in the table view, but you will see it when you put it in a visual. So if I go over here now and drop this into a table, you can see that they're on their own line within a single cell. So now let's do the same thing for our flags. So we're going to do a new column, flags equals, and this is going to be pretty much the same thing we did before, just using our other tables. So we're using calculate, by the way, to force Power BI to use the relationship between the tables when it's doing this. If you leave out calculate, it just puts all of the values in the cell and you don't want that. Concatenate X flags. And then the expression, that's just the flag name. So that's this flags column here that we created. And for the delimiter, I'm going to use a comma this time with a space after it in double quotes. Order by, I'm going to order by the flag name. All right, so flags can be multiple value. My tasks don't have multiple flags, but it can be. That's why we are concatenating these together. All right, so I'm going to throw some of this in a table so you can see what we've got going on so far. So what happens if we drop our subtasks in here now is that it will create duplicate rows, right? Because this isn't a matrix, it's not pivoting. We're not going to use a matrix here because the matrix really doesn't like you to be putting a bunch of text columns in it. It likes to do things with numbers. So we're basically going to kind of do a little bit of a DIY activity here and create our own effect of a matrix inside a table. So we're going to be putting our subtasks into a column and we're going to format them with a check mark if they're complete. So let's go back to our table view and create one more calculated column for our subtasks. So we're going to set subtasks equal to calculate concatenate X again, and we're going to give it our subtask table. And here's where we're going to get a little creative. So the checkbox, I'm going to use an if statement here to say if the subtask is complete, use a checkbox. If it's not complete, use an empty square. And then we're going to concatenate that together with the title of the subtask. So we're going to say if the is checked column in subtasks is equal to true. And this is why we set the column type for the is checked to text instead of true false. Because if you use true false, it gives you an error. So we're just going to use the text value instead. So if it's checked, we're going to give it the unichar value for the checkbox. So that's unichar and then 10003. There's websites, by the way, that have references to what all of the unichar codes are for all of the different things you can use. You can link that in the description if I remember to do that. But then we're going to do an and character to concatenate, and we're going to concatenate just in a space in between double quotes. And then we're going to do another comma. So this is the result if false. So if the subtask box is not checked, then we want it to show the unichar character for an empty box. And that's 11034. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add more than one space for this one. I'm going to do like 3 spaces because what I found when I was testing this is that it needs more space to look decent. It, for whatever reason, doesn't have any padding at all around it and the text gets smushed up against the box. So, and then close our parentheses for our if statement. And then we're going to concatenate onto all of this the name of the subtasks. That's the title field here. And then do a comma. And for the delimiter here, we can give it the Unicode character unichar 10 for a line break. That's going to put every subtask on its own line. It looks nicer for readability's sake. And the order by, so I did not find anything in the available planner data that is great for sorting. So you can sort by the ID, and that seemed to work fine for a while, but then I went in and added some subtasks, and the new subtasks that I added, their IDs didn't go in order. What I did was I just put numbers in front of the subtasks to help the sorting along, so I can just sort it by task name. So if you wanted to sort by ID, you would just select this ID field. I'm going to sort by subtask title, ascending, and then close all of our parentheses. So again, you don't see the line breaks in the calculated column, but you'll see it when we put it in the table. So if I drop that in there, you can see we have nice little boxes for our incomplete subtasks. So now we need to style this table a little bit. I'm going to shrink this one down. So I tend to like to use the table style of minimal. So that is under the Format tab, Style Presets, and Minimal. And then we want to add our conditional formatting. So for our task status, we can go to the little caret icon next to the field, then go to conditional formatting, icons. And we're going to use the format style of rules and then choose which icons you want to use. So I'm going to use the circles. And we only have 3 status values, so I'm going to delete a couple of these. So if the value is not started, then use the empty icon. If it's in progress, then use the half full. And if it's complete, use the full icon and click OK. And then we want to add our conditional formatting for the due date of the task. So for that one, we go to our due date column and do something kind of similar. So click on the conditional formatting, font color. So for this one, we want to change the format style to rules again. And for the field that we want to base this on, we want to base it on that overdue column that we added in the query editor. So that was under tasks, this overdue here. We're going to say if the value is true, so then we want it to be red. Click OK. So that looks good. The conditional formatting rules, because they summarize some of the content, added a total section to the bottom of the table. So we're going to turn that off under the format your visual. Under totals, turn the values off there so that doesn't show up. And then we want to make sure that we've added the fields that we want people to filter by to the filters on this page, or you could add them as slicers too if you want to. So that was the fields on our dimension table. So the assignees, assignee name, and then same thing for the flags. I would also add the task status here so that people could like filter out completed if they wanted to. So next steps, you have your data in here. You could add a Gantt chart. I have another video on how to use the free Microsoft Gantt chart visual. You also want to remember to schedule refresh on the JSON file in Power BI after you've published it. So you need to publish this first, then schedule refresh on the SharePoint source for the file. That will 100% automate the updates to all of this between this and the schedule on the Power Automate flow. So I'll link that and a card on the end screen here. And thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day.